Greetings, everybody. I'm Larry Williams, the Director of CARMA, the Consortium for the Advancement of Research Methods and Analysis, now in the Rawls College of Business at Texas Tech University. And it is September the 9th, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to another version of CARMA Quick Chat, is what we call it. If you're new to CARMA, we are an academic center whose focus is on research methods education for faculty and doctoral students in management and organizational studies. We have a variety of types of events that we offer as through the various membership programs that we have. One of them is that we've been doing the longest. We actually starting our 21st year in doing these, is what we call our CARMA Webcast lecture series, where throughout the upcoming year, we will have 12 very successful distinguished methods scholars give a lecture on their work. And so it's my pleasure today to welcome our presenter for October the 3rd, Stefanie Habersang. And we're going to do a quick chat where we try to learn a little bit more about her and how her interests evolved and end up then getting a preview for upcoming talks. So Stefanie, it's a pleasure to meet with you and have this opportunity to chat. I appreciate you taking the time to join me. So hopefully your semester's off to a good start.
Thank you so much, Larry, for welcoming me. So I'm very happy to have this quick chat and also to contribute to CARMA. Thank you.
Yeah. So, well, I didn't say it, but you are Dr. Stefanie Habersang. So what led to you? It's always surprising the various different routes that lead people to graduate school and getting a PhD. How did it work with you?
Yeah, basically, so first of all, maybe I have to admit and to acknowledge, because you were nicely introducing that you have a series of distinguished scholars, and I would still call myself in the early stages of my academic career.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm still a junior professor, how we call it in Germany, assistant professor level. So it's not too long ago, I would say, that I finished my PhD, and a bit unusual maybe for Germany, I would say, at least. I didn't pursue my PhD right after my master degree, but I was also working in the industry for a couple of years, more specifically in the fast-moving consumer goods industry as a marketing manager. And yeah, that was basically a great time, but at the same time, it was also as maybe the industry is suggesting, fast moving. So you didn't have a lot of time to pause and to rethink decisions and to think why you're doing things. And during that time, I was actually thinking back to my studies and enjoying to understand things a bit more in depth and have some actual time to think about stuff. And that's where for a couple of years, I was thinking about if I want to do my PhD when I was working in the industry. And as you may imagine, it's always hard to step outside of a working system and to decide to do something entirely new. Yeah, but then it worked out. I found a nice home, academic home, where I could pursue my PhD. It was also here at Leuphana University in Germany. And yeah, that was basically the starting of an academic career that I hadn't planned when I started to do my PhD. I never thought I would stay in academia.
Yeah, okay. I was going to ask about that. So whether that was your intent from the beginning. So then tell us about your research methods training that you got, because there must have been some things happen in that kind of led to how your interest evolved. And I think, the international model of methods training is very different and much more individualized. And so how did it happen? What types of things did you get exposed to?
Yeah, actually, when I started my PhD, I was not so much interested in methods per se. It was more like a means to an end, I would say, because I was interested in specific topics such as organizational failure, project failure, and all these things more on the organizational literature. However, when I started here, I had some very nice colleagues who were working on this case study, multiple case study research, and some of them were even touching upon qualitative meta studies. That was also becoming my field of expertise over time. And I think what was particularly interesting was that they tried to experiment with this kind of synthesis of individual, in-depth, single qualitative case studies, which was, in at least back then, something that was not that much accepted in qualitative research per se. So they were kind of a very unique group, but still that was quite interesting. So I joined them from the start because I found their discussions quite interesting. I was always interested in this kind of comparative methods. And yeah, lucky me, I had a supervisor here who was offering also training on comparative case studies, also a little bit in this area of synthesizing qualitative knowledge. But I would say I was the one who got really, really interested in that and pursued a bit more of an in-depth exploration than during my PhD, so which is quite unusual to do your PhD, or at least one paper in your PhD on methods, I would say. Yeah, but actually that was, it was very enriching because I got the opportunity here. I'm in at Leuphana, I would say, here in our institution, we are, at least in our group, very focused on qualitative methods. So that was also quite kind of helpful, but at the same time quite open to new approaches. Because when I first entered the academy in 2018, and maybe that's also a bit of an anecdote, I got the Best Student Paper Award by the Research Methods Division. And afterwards, I also had a chat with a couple of more senior colleagues, and they didn't find this method particularly, I would say, interesting or acceptable in a way, because, like, you know, some would even say, oh, you violate the single case studies, you cannot synthesize from something that is intended to be idiosyncratic and so on. So we had a very interesting discussions around that, but I felt like, okay, that's interesting because, you know, when you have this kind of friction, there's something into it. So, and that was also like a kickoff where I thought, okay, maybe I will go deeper and explore more. And I had also the chance, and that was also, I would say, a big luck to talk to the people in other disciplines who were doing qualitative meta studies. And I think that's very interesting because for us in management, this seems something unique or more exotic, but in other disciplines in healthcare, this is like a common standard training for doctoral students. And I found that quite interesting, and also their approach to this. So it's also not something that we invented here, but it's rather integrated from other disciplines.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you had such a great experience with the methods division. It's a near and dear to my heart from back when I was a graduate student, and you think your experience is representative. They're very open and engaging community that welcomes new people and always has interesting perspectives. And I think, you know, particularly you'll find, I found myself as I was thinking more about the concept, kind of, I don't want to take away from your talk, but I'd asked a general question about, you know, for traditional quantitative meta-analysis, do the issues that are addressed with that, are they similarly embraced in the type of method that you're going to be talking about?
So I'm not an expert in quantitative meta-analysis, but as good as I'm informed about this, I mean, it's about theory building mostly as well. So it's not a literature review, and that in this sense, it's quite similar to quantitative meta-analysis. You try to find patterns, to maybe explore theoretical claims or evidence that you have seen, and to better understand what works or what didn't work across a bigger bunch of studies. Obviously, a big difference in qualitative meta studies or meta-analysis or synthesis, these are all even different approaches, is that the number of studies that you can synthesize may not be as big as in quantitative research, because in the end, there is still some sort of qualitative data analysis involved. And so that would be something different. But of course, I mean, there are also different ways of how you could do a qualitative meta studies. So some are more theory informed, advancing, refining theory. Others are more about developing policy implications, practical recommendations. Of course, they have also a theory frame, but they aim for something different. And in this way, I would say, similar as with quantitative meta-analysis, so there is this idea of advancing theory through it and not just summarizing something.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so one of the things that that I find as I talk to different people who have a methods side to their writing is that they nearly everybody also has substantive interests, and in many cases it turns out that those substantive interests kind of shape and develop the methods interest that follows after that. So was that true with you? Do your substantive interests play a role in leading you to emphasize this particular type of method and how you approach the use of it?
I think that's a very interesting question, because when I think about this, I would say, obviously, when I was trained and what I'm doing also, usually I do also single in-depth qualitative studies. So this is also something I'm doing on different topics in the field of organization studies, digital transformation, sustainability, and understanding in depth how a single case study works, if you want to do that, or an ethnography works, or a grounded theory approach, is very fundamental in understanding what is the ground evidence of what you have when you start doing a qualitative meta study, right? I mean, it's not that you can, and that's maybe what a lot of people are conflating often, is the better you are knowledgeable about the individual qualitative methodologies that are out there, the better you can also develop a suitable approach and a different approach to the problem you want to address in a qualitative meta study. For example, often it doesn't make sense, basically, or let's frame it differently, often it makes sense that you have some common understanding about epistemological groundings of qualitative studies, that you can understand. This is maybe more of a, I would say, positivistic study. This is more of a constructivist study. This is more of a critical study, maybe also different forms of critical studies. If you're able to distinguish this makes it also much easier to design your qualitative meta study, right? And so knowing also how to conduct these studies yourself, because you have an empirical interest also in doing research on single qualitative studies, may also enhance your capabilities in doing a good qualitative meta study. This is how I would see it in a way. So this is like also advancing my understanding over time. The more single studies I do, the better I also get in understanding what is possible in a qualitative meta synthesis or study.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the questions I like to ask of people who we bring into the quick chat is to get them to kind of reflect on changes that have occurred in their career. And I oftentimes ask about, how have you changed as a writer or as a reviewer or an editor? But in your case, I just was interested. It's fresh enough for you that you kind of have can remember what it was like when you started your training and what you thought your career, how it would evolve, and how the profession would be once you got out and became more involved in it. And so now you're living it, doing it. So is it different? Has it turned out to be different than what you thought? And what things are different about it?
Yeah, I think that was one of the toughest questions when I was thinking about it before I did it. I think I didn't have any expectations when I started my PhD. Maybe that was good because I was never intending to stay in academia when I started. And maybe that was also releasing some sort of pressure and giving me some sort of opportunity to explore what I was really interested in. And even if people were saying, oh, don't do methods, it will not help you when you want to stay in academia, I was like, maybe I don't want to stay in academia. So I'm doing it because I'm interested. I think I can learn something from that. And so I think that was quite helpful. I think what is different than I expected it maybe from the beginning is, but that might be also very unique to the academic system in Germany in which I am embedded, is the bunch of responsibilities you have once you become faculty. So I was like, a lot of administrative work, a lot of, I mean, I love teaching, to be honest. So this is not something I feel that is taking time away, but rather I think I can use that very much also to sharpen my own thinking with the students together. But like this is something I found overwhelming, and which reminded me a bit on my previous job in the industry. So where it's a bit like, I mean, you never get out of an organization in the sense, right? It's always there's always some sort of administrative work involved, but it's okay. But maybe that's the only thing I was expecting a bit more of autonomy.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember thinking as I transitioned from faculty or from grad school to faculty, it's like, yeah, this is going to be great. I kind of like teaching. I'm going to be doing research. I'm not going to have to be taking classes. And I had faculty that I think really did a good job of trying to give me a realistic preview.
Mm.
But even given that, I had no idea of how that would evolve to be so demanding. So, and
Yeah.
then, people along the way, they find outside kind of interests that capture them. And so, like for me, early in my career, I got editorial kinds of opportunities and leadership positions within the methods division. I
Mm.
think for you, if I understand it correctly, it's with this group or this effort, OS for Future, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that really caught my attention. So I'd
Yeah.
like to give you the chance to tell us about it.
Yeah. And maybe I would say that was one of the luckiest coincidences in my academic career, that I met these people. And they substantially shaped also the kinds of phenomena that I'm interested in by now. So when it was many years back, I think it was in 2019, before COVID, I was deciding that I don't want to fly that much for academia anymore. So because I
Yeah.
was interested in sustainability aspects, and I was just like, okay, it's a bit, it's wrong if I, at least for me, if I take always the plane to places where I can also take the train. So try to be a bit more conscious about my emissions. So I took the train to the European Organization Studies Conference, EBOS, from Hamburg to Edinburgh. And I met up with a bunch of people who was doing the same, or who were doing this, or having the same plans. And we met in the train, and we thought, it's just 5 people out of thousands who are traveling now to EGOS. But it's a really fun way of also traveling, because we discussed what we are doing. So we never met before, most of us.
Uh-huh.
And it was just via, I don't know how we connected, via LinkedIn or something. And based on this train travel, actually, we decided to build some sort of a group that was mainly pushing at the beginning to pursue researchers, at least in Europe, because Europe has a good train system, to be more conscious, at least about one single decision that you can make. So try to take the train and do not fly like these very short distances in Europe, so it can make a difference. So we developed this Always for Future movement, and very soon it became also about teaching. So how can we integrate evidence, educational approaches about the climate crisis in our teaching, that we can share resources. It was about research. It was about leading by example. Also, like this article that you viewed on our webpage, like showing very different approaches of how people incorporate ideas about sustainability and sustainable living as part of their academic identity. Yeah, and basically some of us also took over institutional roles and changed even rules and regulations within large conferences, switching to vegan food offerings and so on. So, and this was basically a very nice way of getting exposed or getting in touch with people that I would have never met, or maybe I would have met those, but maybe we would have never get in touch in that way, and who also became my co-authors on very wonderful projects. And I think that was one of the best coincidences in my career. And they were also very, very supportive throughout my PhD journey and my postdoctoral research. So that was yeah, a great coincidence. Sometimes there are coincidences that help a lot.
There's the longer I'm in the profession, the more I realize how those types of, at the end of the day, those coincidences and the opportunities that emerge and taking advantage of them come to be oftentimes the defining feature of what happens. And it must be great, to have the opportunity to express within your work context things that are so important to you.
Yeah.
So, well, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're chatting with you because in a couple of weeks you're going to be given a Karma Webcast lecture, and that lecture is available to faculty and students at our institutional member schools. We have an institutional membership model where a school joins, and then faculty and students get access to a whole range of resources. Since we've been doing lectures since 2004, we have over 300 recordings in our video library by a very distinguished group. And so you're going to be giving your lecture on October 3rd. Can you give us a preview?
Yeah, of course. So first of all, I watched the videos a couple of times when I was not asking or asked to be here part of this lecture series. So I knew Karma also as a PhD student. So I think that's great. So my talk will be mainly about, of course, qualitative meta studies, and it will be a hands-on introduction, I would say, in this method, because it's not that much established, but there's huge potential. And I think often people confuse that this is just one approach, but in reality, actually, there are different approaches that may fit to this overarching label of qualitative meta study. And I will bring a little bit of light into these different forms of qualitative meta studies, the epistemological foundations and groundings. And then I will also talk about what kind of theoretical and practical insights you can develop out of different forms of qualitative meta studies. And yeah, in the end, I think, and I found that quite important to talk about that, addressing the myth or some sort of myth around qualitative meta studies, because some people are still very skeptical about this approach. And I think that's true, because if you're very in-depth, single case ethnography researcher, maybe you think, okay, what is it that I can synthesize here? Because the context is so idiosyncratic in my study. So I don't want that you synthesize my study. So now we'll address some of these issues that maybe some critics would also put forward, and also to define, okay, under which conditions is also suitable to do a qualitative metasynthesis. And maybe there are also circumstances where it doesn't make sense to do one. And I will address this. Yeah.
Well, we're very much looking forward to it. I should also point out that in addition to those who are members of our institutional membership program, through a special partnership with at the Academy of Management, all Academy of Management students and members can have access to the live lecture that you give, as well as the recording for a limited time. So we will very much be looking forward to that. Stefanie Habersang, thank you so much for chatting, and I'll
Thank
look
you, Larry.
forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, very much looking forward. Thank you.